All right. So listen, folks, I thought this would be a fascinating interview. Tell me if I'm pronouncing your last name wrong, Rich Logis. Is
Yes,
that right?
perfect.
And Rich, you're going to have to give more of your background, but Rich was a MAGA guy. And I think we need more of this because need to have more of these conversations with folks who've seen the light and come away and said, oh my God, I made a mistake. And I saw Rich wrote on Twitter, had a thread that I found really fascinating. He started an organization called Leaving MAGA. So he didn't just leave MAGA, he is trying to convince others to do the same. And I kind of think that is a great thing to do. And I've told you all before, we don't have to all agree on everything 100%. That's just the way this stuff goes. I don't agree with everybody who are Democrats 100%, and sometimes not even 75. So what I want is a coalition big enough to defeat the what I would call the MAGA fascist movement that Donald Trump has created, and that will probably continue after Donald Trump. So welcome, Rich, and thank you. Car, railroad, airplane, we'll kind of take you from wherever you are. We're not picky around here. I'm just glad to have you here.
Well, thank you for having me come in. And I want to use a word that I describe MAGA with all the time, which is community. And I think that intuitively was what originally was one of the attractions for me when Trump came on the scene in 15 and 16. Before then, I was very political, but I was very cynical.
Yeah. Oh, no. I sense this could be an ongoing issue. I'm going to hope not. All right. We lost Rich. MAGA is a cult, Francie. What I'll do is I'll talk to you guys in between. And hopefully we'll get Rich to keep coming back in, and we'll see if we can, we tie it all together, and we'll get ourselves enough. Oh, there he's back.
All right, now I'm here again. I keep getting kicked out.
I know. I'm hoping, we'll do our best to make this work as best we can. And it doesn't have to even be that long of an interview. So just in case you're kicked out again, I'm going to speed it up a bit. Start talking again. So you found community. You were cynical, which I fully get because I'm cynical of lots of things, even with my party. So, yep. So what happened?
When I figured out that Trump was disliked and viewed as a threat by both parties, this iconoclastic outsider, that was my entree into MAGA. And yeah. I didn't just support him as a partisan and then come back in 4 years after the election. I was a volunteer. I was an activist. I wrote part of the call script. After the victory in 16, I became a pundit, a MAGA pundit. I had bylines in Fox and the Federalist. Lots of really far
Can you
right
tell us, by the way, who funds the Federalist, or do you not know either?
It's their actual namesake society, no?
It's always a big joke that the Federalist will not. I mean, maybe the Federalist Society does partially because Leonard Leo has a lot of money, but they never say out loud who funds them. They never tell people. So it's become a little thing on the left where we always annoy them and harass them about who funds them. But go ahead. Yeah, listen, those are legit bylines if you're on the right. So yeah, you wrote for real places. Yeah.
I wrote for WND, World Net Daily, whose founder, Joseph Farah, was the one who originated the Obama birther conspiracy.
That wonderful guy whose daughter, Alyssa, worked for Trump and became a never Trumper, interestingly enough. Okay.
So I was completely all in. There was no one who probably was more passionate about MAGA than I was. Maybe there were many who was as passionate, but it was my life. It was my 24/7. It was not forget about taking a day off. I never took an hour off. And
do you think that was your need for community that was driving that, or something else?
Yes, I think that it was a large part community, Cliff, but it was also this desire that I had as a politically cynical person of smashing the system.
Yep.
Trump
I mean, it was a powerful message, Trump's message, what he was saying, because, yeah.
And I think that it was also, looking back on it, I don't say it as a self-defense, but this desire to tear down the political order and build it anew That was a non-controversial anodyne reason I think many had for supporting Trump. And yes, there were the statements about McCain and women and Muslims, but I believe the alternative was infinitely worse. And because I
Okay.
believe that Hillary and the
We're not going to
Democrats were
litigate
infinitely
like,
worse.
yeah, I want to know what got you there. We don't have to litigate, you don't have to defend yourself and any of that. Like, you saw the two things. I know the outsider message was appealing to a lot of people.
Yes,
We had a lot of positives in our society, but again, we have huge income inequality. There are many things that aren't working for people. A lot of people don't know that a lot of the billionaire class in the Republican Party is responsible for that. And if you don't know that, and then you may just hate both parties. And this outsider comes and says, "I'm going to help you." Listen, I didn't do it, but I get it. So go for it.
sure. Yeah, and throughout the course of my time in MAGA, there were moments that I censured Trump privately. Charlottesville was one, COVID was one, but publicly we never criticized, because if you did it, it was essentially a MAGA auto da fe. It was, you'd be exiled as a heretic and an apostate. Now I know that for some hearing that, they're going to say that sounds like a cult, and I want to just give some nuance to that, because I do concur that there were parts of my life that were cult-like. If this is
Okay.
something that I was doing every day by the hour, never taking an hour off, yes, there's something that is cult-like. But I want to caution against referring to Trump MAGA voters as cultists, because as part of leaving MAGA's work, our organization, we want to extract people to leave. We want to empower them. And referring to them as cultists, it's just going to strengthen that already strong bond that they
Right.
have with Trump already. And we don't want to give them reasons to stay, because there's going to be a lot of MAGA Americans, Cliff, who are going to be very, very disappointed and dejected when they start to realize that all of the problems Trump said he's going to fix, there's not going to be any fixing.
Now I'm waiting for the weekly infrastructure weeks and how he's going to has concepts of a plan to replace Obamacare. I'm excited about that.
Well, I said to someone yesterday whom I know is a Trump voter, but we get along, and he's a good guy, because most MAGA Americans are good people deep down. I do believe that. But he started talking about President Biden yesterday, and I said, whoa, 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 hold on a second. President Biden is not the president anymore. He's not there anymore. Now it's Donald Trump. So when are my eggs going to be cheaper? And when's my insurance going to be cheaper? And when is my wife going to get a pay raise? And when this and when that? I
Yeah, hit him
said,
with all that
I
now.
when's that going to happen? And forget about everybody else, right? Because that this was an election about the misunderstanding of capitalism. I'm going to die on that hill, that I believe more, in addition to mis and disinformation, as
Yeah.
primary a reason as any for Donald Trump winning, was Americans' misunderstanding of the actual model and system of commerce and government we live in. And the
Oh, well.
reason that and it's not because of people being stupid or lacking good character, it just goes to show that for many Americans, they don't comprehend what it is type of system of economics and capitalism we live in, and what has been
But we
instilled
don't
in
educate
people.
people about
We
finance and
don't.
about
We
yeah.
don't. It's instilled in Americans that they have a right to financially prosper and have a right to do better year after year. And I can appreciate, look, I'm not downplaying that people have economic anxieties. Most Americans will for the duration of their lives. And
Yeah.
yes, it's true that there are Americans who maybe aren't doing as well today as 4 years ago, but you know what? There are millions who were doing a lot better now than they
Yeah.
were. And that's called capitalism. That's called unequal outcomes, which champions of capitalism tout all the time. Sorry to go on that soapbox, but
No,
that's,
it's not a soapbox though, and we actually were outperforming a lot of, I think most of the Western European countries in terms of how we were doing, and I think our inflation wasn't quite as bad. But still, Western nations post COVID, post all that stuff, we were countries were kicking out incumbents, and it was a tough. It was it was always going to be tough to stay in for that reason.
and I never, Cliff, took the time to really understand all this. And in my time in MAGA, the only media and information I consumed was the type of media I was writing for. Even at Fox News, we looked at Fox News as squishy Vici type media. It was better than it's better than MSNBC, but it's Fox News. It's not great. For me, it was the Breitbarts, the Federalists, the American Thinkers, American Greatness. These are places I was writing for. Yeah, I had a byline in Fox, and I watched Tucker Carlson. I thought he was great back in the day, but I never really informed and educated myself. When I started to have doubts about my support for Trump and MAGA and my governor, Ron DeSantis, that's when I started to diversify my news and information sources. And my
Well, that's good.
epiphany
I think
from,
somebody had asked in our chat, and I missed it earlier, what your thoughts were on DeSantis. So it's good to hear because he tries his best. He started using Gulf of America even before Trump brought it up in the State of the Union yesterday. So he's trying to ape Trump in every way possible. It's sort of pathetic, but go ahead.
I try to not, I don't want to, and I'm not saying you're doing this, I don't want to dehumanize anyone, but to me, Ron DeSantis is the political equivalent of Jake LaMotta playing to the same 10 people in the cabaret every night, and all 10 people tell him how wonderful he is and how great he is, while the rest of the outside world just has no interest. So Ron
Anytime you can
DeSantis
make a Raging Bull reference, you've got me. So good, well done.
and let's just say an iconic intro and ending for Raging
Yes.
Bull, if I could just mention Scorsese's best film. Anyone who says Goodfellas, respectfully, I'm going to disagree. It's Raging Bull. Soapbox over on film. I got a lot to say about that one.
I may think it's one or others, not either of them, but we'll talk about that another time.
Yeah, that's a different one. We're going to come on. We're going to butt heads on that. No, I love all of them. Or I should say I love both of them. I started to have my doubts when Trump started talking more and more and more about the stolen election. I knew that he was mismanaging COVID. My epiphany to leaving MAGA happened gradually and then suddenly all at once, because we had the election lies. I knew he was lying. I knew we lost. I knew that he mismanaged COVID. I never said anything publicly about it, but privately I did. And then it was Ron DeSantis in the summer of 21 inviting anti-vaxxers to his press conferences, not people with a DeSantis sign out in the middle of nowhere saying that, no, at his press conferences, anti-vaxxers. DeSantis starts talking about Fauciism. I thought Ron DeSantis, for the first year and a half of the pandemic, in fairness, he sounded reasonable a lot of the time. I thought
I may have disagreed with him, but he was much more reasonable in the beginning, the party overall, before it became official to embrace attacking vaxxers, like a whole bunch of people did. One of the most reasonable governors in the country was the one here, Mike DeWine, who I think people would argue did a pretty good job in the beginning. But then it became, from down on high that you had to turn against it, and that was it.
Yes, and DeWine tracked just like DeSantis, because as soon as DeSantis had the anti-vaxxers at his pressers, it was a shock to me. I was confused. I did not understand why it was happening. That's what prompted me to diversify my news and information sources. And once I started to do that, I started to realize that pretty much everything that I had believed was not true. The Democrats weren't coming to disarm us. They weren't importing brown people to seize permanent power. Our kids weren't being indoctrinated in the public schools to become transgender Marxists. I didn't realize this instantaneously, but as I started to delve deeper, I started to understand better January 6th.
Yeah. And can I say,
sure.
There was a question I wanted to ask you along those lines. Crap, I can't think. Go ahead. We'll get back to it.
Remember also, Cliff, in early February of 22, the Republican Party calls January 6th legitimate political discourse. That was their wording. So
they called it a tour too. The ones who called it a nice, that just pissed me off something fierce.
I didn't support January 6th, what happened, but what made me upset about that day was that I believed that all the rioters were harming our chances for a comeback. At the time, I wasn't upset that police officers were being attacked and that people were going to be injured, probably die. No. I had political calculation. I was thinking about trying to lick our wounds and then rebuild for a 2024 comeback. That was what went through my mind at
Yeah.
the time.
That's
You
when you got
talk
to
about
question yourself. If I'm
dehumanizing.
going to be honest, that's when morally, and I'm not, I told you I wouldn't get on a high horse during this interview because I've done enough bad things in my life. We all have. But yeah, I think that those moments are when we all need to question ourselves when we're thinking about things in that, you know what I mean? In that way. Um, and maybe that did lead you to question yourself. I don't know.
Well, I can't think of anything more dehumanizing than overlooking the loss of life and trauma and injury because it didn't suit what I wanted to be my political outcome potentially.
Yeah.
And for me, the final straw, as I'm going through this year of personal tumult, struggling with this recognition that I supported MAGA when I should not have, it was the Uvalde, Texas school shooting. And that was in May of 22. And
Yep.
after that happened, I quietly left MAGA. I didn't tell anyone except my wife and a few others. But Cliff, I'm telling you that when I did that, it's a little difficult for me to explain it because it's more experiential than explicable, but something was nagging at me. This voice, this conscience, the alarms would sound saying you can't do it quietly. You have to go public. And I was very unapologetically public in my support for
Well, good
Trump,
for you. I mean, that takes a lot of
and I had to
courage.
reciprocate it. I had to do it. And on August 30th, 2022, I published a mea culpa in which I said, yes, I supported Trump and DeSantis and MAGA for what I thought were the right reasons, but I was wrong. And I need to admit my error. I need to acknowledge the wrong of my ways and say that I am sorry. And when I published it, the God's honest truth, Cliff, is I never believed that anybody would care. I really
Now, can
didn't.
I
And
ask you
it's
this?
sure.
Where did you publish that?
So that was published at a site called Occupy Democrats.
Yeah, I know them. Okay.
Not the biggest, not to sound like an ingrate, not the biggest fan. They're really, really hyper partisan left, but they did give me an opportunity to share my story, and I'm thankful for that. And
They're
I
also
can
a little
provide
bit of a
anyone,
engagement farm, if you will. But
yes, and there was a. I went from thinking no one would give a shit about that apology to instantaneously receiving messages. Rich, can you talk to my mother? Can you talk to my father? Can you talk to my best friend, my maid of honor? Cliff, I was completely naive and oblivious that
yeah.
so many relationships had been torn asunder as a result of Trump and MAGA. And
Oh,
it just continually reinforced and affirmed for me that I had a hand in that.
well,
I had
here's the thing,
culpability.
Rich. It's been a multi-generational thing. Trump's the latest and the loudest and the worst
Yeah.
incarnation.
Right.
But there's a woman, and I can't think of her name, and I bet somebody in the chat will know here. Um, who I've talked to before. And I talked to her about having her on, and I haven't. We just haven't gotten in contact on it recently. And she did it was a documentary, "The Brainwashing of My Father," and it was all about how he started watching Fox and listening to Rush Limbaugh,
Mhm.
and he had been this sort of guy who believed in equality, and he was a quiet sort of JFK kind of Democrat, and he became this angry, screaming, they're taking everything away from us. I mean, so you're not the first, and you're frankly, Trump is not the first to do this. This has been, it's gotten worse because it's gotten more sophisticated, and Trump has a huge microphone. To have the president of the United States doing it obviously is horrendous. But I know as somebody who worked in the movements I worked in, the NRA started doing this 20, 30 years ago in their emails, where they started very much pushing the us against them narrative. And it's something that's happened on the right a lot, which is dehumanizing Democrats to the point of where family members can't coexist. Go ahead. Any
And I
case.
and I'll tell you that for my
Jen
MAGA,
Sanko, there it is. Thank you, Jesse James.
yeah,
Her name is Jen Sanko.
Jen, she'd be great to have on. In fact,
I, yeah.
I actually just recently asked her. I wrote her a message. She's okay with me saying this because she gave me her consent. I said, Jen, I want to ask you a question about your dad. When he was watching Fox News all of that time, was there ever a moment where he thought, "Oh, come on, that can't be true"? Just A singular moment. I'm not talking about multiple.
Yeah.
And she wrote to me and said, no, he believed everything. And the reason I wanted to ask her that, and this is important, I think, for those watching, we cannot underestimate that all of us are susceptible to being influenced, right? To your
Yes.
point on this. And again, it's not as if I don't defend ignorance, but all of us are vulnerable to being inculcated into this MAGA right-wing world because it's predatory. It exploits and manipulates so many of our natural fears and concerns about our future, about survivalism, the economic stress that we mentioned
Yeah.
earlier. That's what MAGA does. And as the winner, remember, we're the winning side post 2016, between 2016 and 20.
Right.
As the winner, I lived a life in states of perpetual panic and despair and desperation and nihilism and hopelessness as the winning side, because I was
Yeah.
in this political bout. If I had met you, Cliff, or I knew, even if I'd known about you, forget about knowing it, I don't know anything about you except your name and your work, I would have considered you an existential threat and enemy to myself and our country. I would have viewed you as a
It's
traitor. That's
possible
how I
you would have
look
been
at
right. I'm kidding. Go ahead.
it's like, oh, Rich, the cover's blown. No,
I know.
and I'm saying that, Cliff, to you because I want to give a prorated apology that I would have said that about you. I said that about
That's
people I
okay, man.
cared about. That's what I said.
No, come back. We'll get him back. What I'd say is I see somebody in the chat there, Mr. Stern or Two Dude, saying I'm not susceptible. I think I don't agree with his point that we're all susceptible to MAGA, but I do think we are all susceptible to certain levels of becoming parts of groups and being convinced that that group has the only answer. And I was on a listserv at one point. I'm going to add you back to the stage, Rich, but I'm just making a
I'm back.
point. It's okay. Don't worry about it. I'm making a point based on the point you made, which is what somebody said in the comments here, which is we may not necessarily all be susceptible specifically to MAGA. What I'm saying is we all are susceptible to something of that nature, whether it be on the
Sure.
political on the right or the left. I mean, listen, there are some people who get anything that's competitive. It's in our DNA. It's in our evolution. There's some people that get so crazy about their sports team with the face paint and the whatever that they can't live a normal life. Like they have to be at every game. They don't spend time with their kids. There are when you become part of a certain community is fantastic. But when you become part of a community and that's all you know, and those are the only people you talk to, because I was saying I was on a listserv that I think went ultra left around 2007, 2008. And people were saying things on this list like, that were so far to the left, attacking Obama a lot. And I started believing some of it. And then I'd come out and talk to what I would say were more normal Democrats, my wife, my parents, my family, and they'd be like, what the hell is wrong with you? And for a small moment, I went in that direction, and I feel like I came back to a reality from that. And so I think my point is that if you shut yourself off on purpose or not, and you're getting most of your information and most of the people you're socializing with are all of the same belief and say the same things and whatever, I think we all are susceptible to varying levels of cult-like behavior, be it political or many other things. Obviously, most cults aren't about politics. You may believe
Right.
that aliens are like those guys out in San Diego are going to bring you up to their ship and you commit, sadly, mass suicide, or Jim Jones, there's many different ways that this is done. So I think that's an important point, but continue, please.
Well, I think that there is a challenge in making democracy a community. And and I don't proclaim to think I know the answer to that. We created Leaving MAGA as a community for people who leave, or people
Yeah.
who maybe have some doubts about their support. They're starting to question their beliefs. And we also invite friends and family of those who are still in the thrall of MAGA to offer testimonials, because for those in MAGA who
That's
are
smart.
going to
It's
get,
like an intervention.
Yeah, and thank you. And I can't take credit for having thought about this. I could bullshit everyone and say I had a 2-year game plan. It was no. This is completely unlikely and accidental that I just happened to think about this in such a way where I held up a mirror, but the mirror was replicate the community, but not the ethos. People come to Leaving MAGA, they're reclaiming their individuality, because one of the mythologies of the MAGA community is rugged individualism. And I will tell you that that's non-existent. MAGA is wholly conform.
No, this is gonna. Oh, we got you back quickly this time. Awesome.
MAGA is not. It is a wholly conformist community, and that's why any information that even remotely challenged the pervasively held beliefs in the community, it was shunned. It was kept out.
Of course, yeah.
Well,
And that's how these. Yeah, go ahead.
And just like you're saying, when you're around like-minded people and talking to them and online with them and in person. I spoke at Trump groups. I was a sponsor at events. Every single month I knew professional, successful, educated people who ran Trump groups. So it wasn't this, uneducated, uncouth. That was actually not my experience. I was around Ivy League graduates, for God's
Yep.
sakes, at MAGA events. So I found my
Well,
validation.
let me tell you, as an Ivy League graduate, the people who I know who graduated from my school right now are like some of the worst people in the world. So, having graduated from Penn, its graduates include the Trump family, Elon Musk. Who else? Who else? Like
Oh,
Frank
Musk was
Luntz,
it.
Cenk Uygur. I'm not proud of it.
Musk
I don't know. I'm sorry.
Musk was a grad from UPenn also.
Musk was actually there when I was there. I think he was a year or two behind me. I didn't
Uh-huh.
know him because he was not somebody who you knew because he didn't have a famous name at that time or whatever. But yeah, he was there when I was there.
I think Musk and Trump are much more similar than dissimilar. I know that was talked
Oh,
about before I
I think
came
they're
on.
almost the same person in a lot of ways. There's so many similarities, and I joke around that I can only imagine the extra PR help and whatever, and the extra like help for reaching out to donors, whatever that Penn has hired to have to apologize for two of the craziest people in America having gone to my university and people not wanting anything to do with it anymore. Probably.
Well,
Go ahead. Sorry.
and Elon Musk found his political community
Right.
with MAGA.
But I don't want to cut you off, but I also want to add something else. Let's never make the mistake of these guys are like, every MAGA person, well, you must be a high school dropout. DeSantis
Right.
went to Yale. Ted Cruz went to Harvard, Princeton and Harvard for law school. What's his face? That jerk in Missouri, Josh Hawley, went to Yale. Clarence Thomas went to Yale. I mean, we can go on. There are plenty of awful people that went to the elite universities. So it doesn't mean you're not going to become MAGA or something worse.
And isn't it quite ironic that so many of the attacks against education come from Ivy League educated Republicans?
Right. They're hypocrites.
That was something else I figured out as I was going through my odyssey of leaving MAGA. I remember all of the attacks on education and thinking Ron DeSantis is a Harvard Law graduate.
Right.
These guys, Tom Cotton is a Harvard Law graduate. Kayleigh McEnany, the former the press secretary, is a Harvard graduate, right? So so you hear all of this, and then the challenge becomes how to get people in MAGA to see it. And I want to try to give a little bit of a hopeful statement here. I think many in MAGA do see this. I think that for many in MAGA, if we're looking at the January 6th pardons, for some of them, something inside of them deep down tells them that this is wrong. But the challenge is how to get them to acknowledge that error, so those errors, so it gets them to a point of them saying, you know what, I can't support this any longer, because no one wants to admit they're wrong. It's a very unnatural act for us to apologize, especially publicly, and admit that we're mistaken. And that was hard for me because I had to walk away from a community. I also had to come to this painful realization that pretty much everything I believed was false. So I made a grave mistake supporting MAGA, and I could no longer defend the indefensible and justify the unjustifiable. And I think that there are people in MAGA, Cliff, who are going to start to realize that. But we need to give them an exit ramp. We need to give them a new place to go, because without a new place, even if they know they should leave, they're probably not going to. And that's really what Leaving MAGA was created for.
There we go. Now I'm back. I've had an issue because my computer is dying and I only have 2 ports to plug into here. So I'm going to play a little game of whenever I'm not talking and you're talking, I'm going to plug my computer and unplug my microphone. This should be fun. So you started questioning all this 2020, 21, you said before, and that's when you decided, like, enough.
It took me a year. It took me a year, though, to finally say I was out. Because when I was fully invested in every imaginable way a human being can be invested in that community, not just financially. Financially was the lower end of the rung on this. It was emotionally, politically, even though I'm not a religious person, there was a spiritual aspect to it. I was part of a team saving American democracy. I was a political soldier in this existential war against political enemies. And those enemies were not just Democrats and liberals and progressives. Anyone who was not with us was 100% against us. So if somebody's 99.9% with us, Cliff and MAGA, they're 0% with us. So a Liz Cheney and an Adam Kinzinger, whom I've gotten to know over the last many months, I apologized to him as well when I spoke to him. I said, Adam, we thought worse of you than we did most Democrats. We looked at you as an actual traitor. We expected Nancy Pelosi to oppose us, but the fact that you and Liz Cheney and other Republicans opposed us, you guys are you're the ones who are the quislings here. You're the ones whom we reserve particular ire for, given that you're Republicans and conservatives.
Yeah. Can you hear me, by the way, right now?
Yeah, you're clear. I can hear you.
Yeah, the sound will be a little worse because it's through my earbuds, but I need to plug in for a bit here. And I want, this part of the show, you're doing most of the talking, so I figure this is the time. Okay, so you realize all that, and that's, not unusual. I don't know if you ever read a great book that I think describes our age by a historian, Richard Hofstadter, The Paranoid Style in American Politics. I actually have it up on my shelf here because I think it so informs the age we are in. He was a great historian and very smart about, and he had a whole passage in there about how to people who had betrayed a movement, they were hated much more than even the people that were on the other side. I mean, that's part of that paranoid style, is that when someone is turned against you, they're worse than Satan. So I'm not surprised with Liz Cheney and Adam Kinzinger and others eventually. And sadly now have you had anybody threaten you? Have you had to worry about your physical safety or that of your family at all, your wife or anything like that?
Thankfully, that has not happened, but I and our organization, we've been the recipient of not just juvenile insults and not just, oh, you were really never MAGA, you're just a grifter, etc. All this imaginary money that I've apparently made somewhere. It's out there. Hopefully I'll come into it.
Dude, can you share some of that with me?
I was gonna say, if you find it, finder's fee. If you find it anywhere,
I got to make this show profitable first, but then I'll see about
somewhere out there. Apparently, there's a pot of gold waiting for us. I wish it. I hope it's not fool's gold when we find it. So I get those,
dude,
but
it's crypto, man. We got to go. I'm just kidding.
Leaving MAGA meme, leaving MAGA meme coin.
Oh, God.
Cliff's Edge meme coin.
Yeah, Cliff's Edge meme. It's so repulsive, all of that stuff.
Well,
and also Trump created a cologne. We could create a cologne too. Did you ever see the ad for that? Trump cologne.
I definitely won't be wearing that.
No. I'm actually kind of like I've meant to do something with it. I have like a little video, and I'm like, I gotta at some point do something with it. So I will make a funny kind of, this is Trump cologne, and we all know what Trump really smells like. But I digress. So you haven't had threats against you. That's actually good
No
to hear.
threats. I'll
Good.
tell you though that there are some what I consider reprehensible comments I received that are very they predominantly are homophobic, and
Yeah, of course. Of course,
it's
they
it's
always go at that because they think that's going to hurt you. When they come at me like that and insult me like that, I just tend to sort of say, "Yeah, I'm happy. I'm gay. I love, I don't understand your point. I love men. They're great." I think the best way to always with them is just to sort of agree with them because they don't know what to do then. They think that they're hurting you by saying that.
and
They're
and I
pathetic.
and I see it, and it's mostly male driven,
Yes.
and someone said something to me today that I hadn't thought about it this way, but someone said to me today, said, Rich, you have a very respectful way of making people in MAGA feel a little uncomfortable about themselves. And I said to this person, I said, wow, that can you be my publicist? Like
I
that
know.
was the way that they put that. I thought I had not really thought of it that way, but this
But
person
you
was
do, Rich. You
correct.
come off like I have to say this. Even if I cut you off, you come off like a really nice, normal, respectable, like well-educated guy. I mean, I wouldn't have known what your background had been in MAGA, or that you had been angry, as you had said, or any of this stuff. So, in a way, I think that made what I found so interesting about having you on is that once I read and I wanted to talk to you on the phone, just to make sure, because today's today and people can fake stuff, but
Sure.
also I wanted to make sure that you're somebody. And I saw that you'd done a podcast. So I assumed that you were comfortable going on video, but I wanted to make sure because some people are not. And, but you come off like a regular guy, a likable guy. You're friendly. You're not combative, even though you and I'm sure disagree on some things. You've probably heard me say some things you disagree with. So I don't know why that wouldn't apply to MAGA too. I mean, I guess
Right.
there are some that are irrationally angry, but as I see people all the time, and you can tell me if I'm wrong, but comes from studying. I have a history background. I did everything but write a dissertation, so I don't have a PhD. I came up short, but I studied history, American history for years, and and you sort of end up sort of seeing these kinds of things again and again and again, with these movements, right? Like nothing is new. Nothing is for the first time. You see people that well, they are members of some group, and they kind of got they got what they needed. And they were convinced by other people to leave. They were convinced that there was something better on the other side. I don't see any reason why you couldn't be part of doing the same thing. There's like a hard. I guess this is how I'll put it. I'm going to summarize it. The way looking at democratic societies, and we have more disinformation allowed here than most. They
Yes.
ban Nazi symbols in Germany. They don't allow terrorist groups they consider to protest in France. Like there's more limits, and I think they're the right limits on speech. I think we need. I think we take it too far when we say disinformation is equal to information. It's not, and
No,
you
it's
need
not.
information to be a successful democracy. But I do think that you're probably going to have 30 to 35% who could go for any fascist movement at any time in a democracy. And I don't expect that we can change the minds of that core. But people forget there's another 12, 15, 16, whatever percent are people that may be semi MAGA or, leaning
Right.
MAGA, and those are people that can be reached. And that's where someone like you is so important as far as I'm concerned.
Yeah. Thank you for saying that, because what I hope that people will take away from my story is that while it was one of the most difficult decisions I had to make, I emancipated myself from a movement that did traumatize me. And I'm not trying to say that in a way to elicit sympathy or pity, but
Yeah.
I want to show that this story of mine, people can change their minds. You say history. I would, as someone who studied English in college, but has tried to familiarize myself with American history in particular, our progress in our nation has come from people changing their minds at any epoch in the history of our country. You know, people
You're
who are
right.
some abolitionists supported slavery at one time. Some who opposed the right to the franchise for women supported women's suffrage. People who are opposed to civil and voting rights in the 60s, and perhaps earlier than that,
I mean,
some came
LBJ
around.
LBJ was a
LBJ.
segregationist
You know,
originally.
there
I
was
mean, and look at, so that's an example. You're exactly right.
there was actually, when the Voting Rights Act and the Civil Rights Acts were passed, it's actually reversed. It was civil then voting, 64,
Yes.
65. There was a higher number percentage-wise of Republicans in Congress
Yep.
than Dems who supported those two laws.
Right.
So you ask, like, well, what exactly? So history changing our minds is not a sign of weakness. It's a sign of evolution, of maturation. It's how we've moved forward in our country. And you're right about with MAGA, it's not novel. It's just the latest iteration of forces and mythologies that have existed since day one of our country. And I don't
Sure.
proclaim to be an historian, but I have come to learn enough about what it was that I actually aided and abetted, and I could no longer aid and abet what it was that I was doing. So I want people out there to hear this and think, okay, leaving MAGA is a community without judgment. No one will be ostracized. We welcome anybody as long as there's only one non-negotiable mandate. Anyone who's going to join us in our community must take responsibility for past actions and rhetoric. That's
Good for you. I think
non-negotiable.
that's important
Yeah,
because if you don't, yeah,
non-negotiable.
if you can't be honest with yourself and with the group you're joining, then how are you going to be honest with
Agree.
everybody else?
Agree.
Um,
That's the only one we
so
require. You got to take accountability for your past.
So do you have any like events or big kinds of things planned, or is it going to just be kind of a regular? I mean, or both. Right? I know you post obviously on Twitter. You got your message out there. I'll do what I can to share your
Thank
site
you.
everywhere that of course, what you're doing
Thank
is
you.
admirable and helpful. Um, but do you have any plans for any kind of, like, I know you've said that you've spoken to Jen Senko, or you've spoken to Adam Kinzinger, or like, is there any plans for any kind of a conference, an event, a something or other? I don't know, whatever it might be.
We are talking about doing an online event, maybe once a month, until we can start doing in-person events, because for those, some of whom have given testimonials with us, they're scattered through across the country.
Right.
And for some, they want to tell their story, and we're very grateful for that. And some have told their stories, but they want to take on a larger leadership role. So we're working on doing in-person events. And as part of in-person events, we've got a workshop we're developing entitled "Where Did You Hear That?" And what that's designed to do is to take a particular topic for that workshop. We're creating a podcast and a video series also, and
Great.
figure out where these mids come from. What is the source? What defines them? What's the proof that they're a lie? And then what the takeaways are. So right now, a lot of it is online. It is social media. For anyone who's watching, if you know anyone who is in MAGA, friends or family, and you feel compelled to tell your story, we want to hear from you. If anyone is out there hearing this and thinking, well, I was in MAGA and I left, please get in touch with us, because we want to hear from you. Even if you decide not to give a testimonial, we still
Yep.
want to hear from you. So we are working on in-person events. We're going to continue to do
Great.
online. I've got some events coming up I'll be speaking at, one of which is next month in DC. It's an organization called Principles First. They've been able to grow pretty quickly in a few years, and Adam Kinzinger is going to be there. Lots of well-known individuals will be there, and
Did
I
he
I
start that one? I feel like is that his, or am I wrong?
Uh, so it was founded by a gentleman named Heath Mayo.
Oh,
So
you told me
that's
this before. I know who
yeah,
Heath
that's
Mayo is.
that's
Yeah.
um that's his organization, but he's done a really great job in building this up to something really formidable. And I was offered very humbly and honorably the chance to speak next month. I'm not sure what it will be on, but I told the team, whatever you need me for, I'm there. Just put me in the game, and I'll contribute however I can.
Well, that's awesome. So we've got one of our great moderators here, Jim, has put, as you can probably see, leaving MAGA and
Yeah, thank you.
the address. Are there any other links you would like us to share, or places where people can follow you or see your work?
Sure. So we have, so you can connect actually to our YouTube channel from our site. We have a very small, but it is growing YouTube channel, and we've got several playlists. And one of the playlists we have are videos that I've produced with the Midas Touch Network.
Oh,
So
okay.
we've got them all in a playlist. It'll say "Leaving MAGA Midas Touch." We've done over a dozen videos. These are testimonials. You can get again through there through our site. Be sure to subscribe and make sure that
Yes.
watch all those videos. All of them have a unique individual telling their stories from their unique experiences. I think
Outstanding.
it's a little bit, I would say it's a little bit binge worthy. Once you watch one or two of them, you want to keep watching them, but that's not a credit to me. That's really a testament to all of those who had the courage to come forward and publicly tell their stories.
Well, I'd like to talk to you. We can talk again offline, or it can even be, online, email, whatever. Because again, if I've got my channel, it's not as big as Midas is, but it's got a pretty solid number of subscribers, and I've got plenty of space up on that community wall of mine to put up stuff, and people tend to respond and watch. And honestly, anything I can do to, and I mean it, anything I can do to help. It's the easiest thing in the world. If you just say, "Hey, can you share this video?" and I just pop it up there, and maybe get some more views, some more people see it. So, and otherwise, also in terms of your writing, um, I have a growing Substack that I just started literally about a week or two ago. But I used to write for the Daily Beast. I used to write for the Guardian. I mean, writing columns was kind of my, in terms of what I do in politics, was one of my big things. So that stuff comes to me pretty naturally, and it's already grown pretty quickly. I think I've got 5 posts, and I've got about 500 or something subscribers. I expect that to expand pretty quickly. So anything I can do to in any of these places, obviously Twitter, Blue Sky, whatever. I'm not on Twitter as
Thank you.
often as I used to be because I hate Elon Musk, but I am on there. I do go there to share some videos. I'll go there to share this live stream, and and because I do think some stuff needs to show up there against their stupid narrative. And so, if there's ways that I can share your stuff in any number of places, um, let's keep in touch, I guess, is what I'm saying in my own long-winded way.
Yes, and I would like to, and I've got some ideas actually. I'd like to run by you offline to get your input, if I may.
Well, that sounds good. This is I had today. This is honestly, I've joked. This may be breaking a record for me. This is the fourth show that I've done today. I don't know if you know Stephanie Miller. I was on her show. I co-host a podcast with a
Yeah,
guy named Bob Seska. Maybe I can get Bob to have you on. You'd be a great guest on his.
sure.
And then I went to my friend Tony Michaels, who was on in the beginning, and now this. And so today I will probably want to just collapse when I'm done here. But I have a live stream tomorrow. I'm free tomorrow morning, and then Friday is the day I don't live stream. Fridays are always very good for me. So reach out and just we'll either this week, next week, we'll figure something out. But I would love to be helpful in any way in what you're doing, and obviously sharing stuff and whatever. I don't know if I can be helpful in any other way because I've said some very not nice things about MAGA, so I don't know that I'm going to attract anybody to our cause. But if I can share your stuff places, well, I'm happy to do it. So
It means a lot, Cliff. Thank you for for your interest and caring about what we are doing. I've got a feeling we're going to be talking a lot more in the near future.
I do too. And he's really honestly, you know, and I can't say, like, we all come into these things with biases, and I've got such strong feelings about MAGA, but talking to you, you're just a great guy, and both times on the phone and now here, genuine, and you seem to really care about mistakes that you believe you've made. And I mean, I'm just not trying to sound like a jerk. I mean, I agree with you, but again, I've made plenty of mistakes, so no judgments. And you're trying to make up for that, and isn't that what we're all trying to do at points in life, which is make up for screw ups, or bad decisions, or and you'll even that ledger. I promise you, with what you're doing, you'll more than even that ledger. And you're exactly the kind of person, I think, who can reach people that I can't, and probably most of the audience can't, and can help us bring back sanity to this country, where, as you said about democracy, as we were talking about earlier, where we are a community, we're all agreeing that we're part of one vast community, and sometimes the good of the community is more important than and all everybody just saying no, whatever I want to do. You know, that's what democracy is about. So I'd
And
love
I
to
and I
see us.
would, Cliff, I would like to welcome you also to our Leaving MAGA community. So thank you for that.
Oh well, I mean, anytime if you think they won't want to punch me there, although it'd be hard through the computer, I am happy to come join and talk and and do anything you want me to do. I'm happy to do it. So
Okay, I appreciate it. I'll be in touch with you very soon.
you take care, and thanks so much for coming on.